Welcome, welcome. It is the Front Page Saturday Town Hall edition. I hope you are enjoying this beautiful Southern California day. This is our Saturday edition where we focus on things that are pertinent to the community right now. It's that election 9 days away. And I wanted to point out that the Elect Justice event we were talking about today at the Forum, which Angela Rye will be at, is actually today. From 1 to 5, and electjustice.org is where you go. I'm going to be at Dorsey High School at 10:15. That's right. I'm going to Zoom over there after the show, and we are going to tell you everything you know to get you ready to vote yes on Proposition 16. Will be some Dorsey folks there, and lots of our friends from the political arena. So join me, socially distanced, wear a mask, then you can go to the Forum. Big day today. So we're bringing on some voices here who can help us unpack ballot initiatives and boards, things that, a lot of us struggle with. We have the policy director at Black Women for Wellness. She's also executive director of Black Women for Wellness Action Project, Nourbese Flint. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me this morning.
Do you have people asking you all the time, okay, how should I vote? Where should I look? I do. I'm not the director of any policy program. I'm on the radio.
That is probably the most asked question I've gotten in the last few days, or last month per se, since we got our ballots. And so I am very much looking to November 4th because it's been a very busy time.
That's two of us. Okay. Joining us also Sharron Lawrence. He's the founder of I Can Lead. He's spent first part of his career as a political staffer working for elected officials and labor organizations. Now he provides strategic consultation to individuals seeking to run for office. Sharron Lawrence, welcome to the Front Page.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for helping with this. We've literally been getting stumped on the air. And also joining us, award-winning writer and prolific recipe developer. She is Molly Watson. Good morning to you. What? Recipe developer? That doesn't sound right. Okay, let me read this other bio. She's a senior development manager for fundraising and partner outreach for Courage California. She's an alumna of Emerge California, a board member for the Black Women's Democratic Club of California, and she works at the state level in creating a pipeline for progressive women to run for seats over the next 4 to 6 years, which seems like a very worthwhile pursuit, and it's one that's already bearing fruit. Molly Watson, welcome to the Front Page.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
And I appreciate you guys all, because there's a lot of, between the three of you, lots of knowledge that we will all benefit from. And this is not just for people in the city of LA, because when we talk about LA County, there are tons of other cities, and many of them have measures on the ballot. And you keep track of some of those, right, Molly Watson?
Yeah, we actually at Courage this year, we did a statewide down ballot voter guide for recommendations on different seats, but we also went as far down as we could into local seats, as well as the statewide ballot measures and as many local measures as we could get into. As you know, California is a massive state, and LA County is just huge as is. So we attempted to cover as much as we could with wonderful partners like Nourbese, who's also on the line, and others.
Okay, so let's start with LA, because that's I guess the basics, even though the station is in Inglewood, and we do have some measures on the ballot, at least one that I know of in Inglewood. But let's start with you, Nourbese. When we talk about LA measures, we haven't hardly talked at all about RR, and it is important, right?
Yeah, so this measure would authorize a bond of $7 billion to update the infrastructures of LAUSD. And so it is super important in the sense of making sure that the buildings of our schools actually get an upgrade. We haven't really invested in upgrading the buildings and the infrastructure in over 50 years. And so this got put on by LAUSD to be like, hey, we need some money, and this is a bond for us to pay for the infrastructure. So it doesn't go to the classes, it doesn't go to teachers, it doesn't go to, buying books, which are all still super, super important. And then there's another proposition that could help with that. This is just for what my granny would call the bones, right, of trying to build up the infrastructure and update the technologies and the lands and the buildings for LAUSD.
So some people may think, well, we've got Proposition 15, which is taking property taxes from corporations and, big manufacturers and giving it to LAUSD. Why do we also need RR?
RR is because it's looking at the bones. For Proposition 15, that is going to schools and communities, and so we still actually have a fight if it passes, and I hope it does. But that can go to classrooms and teachers and all the digital technologies that we need. This is just for the infrastructure, and we need to upgrade the infrastructure. I was talking to a friend the other day, and she was telling me that the big one is coming. So we've had a couple of mini earthquakes before, and we want to make sure that our schools and our children actually have the best infrastructure, the best buildings, just in case it happens while people are at school. And so this is specifically looking at how do we make sure that the technology, that we got the good wires and for we can have the best internet and all those things are taken care of. And we can use the other money to make sure that we put into the classroom.
I think that's a really good point because, just regular folks, we sometimes don't realize that budgets go in different pots. This is, if it's earmarked for one thing, it can't just be moved over to do something else, right? So these are two different projects for our schools, it sounds like. And also the other thing is that we forget that, one of the richest states, or if not the richest state of all 50, we're number 47 in how much we spend on our schools, which is really, I think that should be an embarrassment to us.
Absolutely. And this is why Proposition 15 is so important, because California is so low in terms of student per capita, in terms of how much money that we pay for our students per capita. And we know that education is one of the ways that it could help with upward mobility. But if we are essentially robbing our students and our young people from the beginning, it's just that much of a fight more for them to compete with people within the state as well as outside of the state for jobs and just, general knowledge.
Molly Watson, we have similar measures, city measures, and it is confusing because when you talk about propositions, that's state. So when you talk Proposition 15, which is a yes, Proposition 16, which is a yes, that's statewide. Right now we're talking about city measures, not propositions, but local ballot measures, and so they will be different for you depending on which city you're in. If you live in Pomona, you won't see RR on your ballot because it's only for the city of Los Angeles. So we have similar bonds for schools measures in a bunch of other cities. Can you talk about some of those, Molly Watson?
Yeah, I can actually talk about, here locally, I am in Long Beach, and we actually have an interesting measure that was put on the ballot here a little bit later to really kind of outline some of these other issues that are also affecting, and sort of like Nourbese was saying, there are different pieces that have to go in to support our communities and our schools that we do need to come back from supporting. Luckily, here in Long Beach, we actually have something that is less of a bond measure, and it's more of a tax on oil production. So here in Long Beach, you may know we are one of the second largest cities in LA County, and we have a huge port that has a ton of business that goes through it all the time, as well as oil production. So here in Long Beach, we have Measure S, which would place a 15-cent tax on oil production to invest in Long Beach's future that would basically create lasting change for generations. And it's a local action that we sort of need to have impact that would happen. And this would particularly be, obviously, for oil companies paying a share of revenue for Long Beach to use these funds for community programs that would address health inequities, including the impact of COVID-19 on people of color, early childhood education, youth development and violence prevention, job training opportunities, and just help improve our air, water quality, and environmental justice programs. So while there are bonds like this on the ballot, and I believe also in LA, like for instance, I'm actually not voting on RR, nor am I voting on HH because I'm in Long Beach. Obviously, I'll be voting on Measure J, which is a countywide thing. But here in Long Beach, we have this opportunity basically to not have to pay this bond, but to tax oil production to bring environmental justice back to our community. So we're pretty excited about that.
Okay, so I think that's what we need to get our minds around, because with County Measure J, which we'll talk about, that is county-wide, so that's going to cover a lot of LA cities, LA county cities. That's what's confusing about LA. You're in LA County when you're in Inglewood, even though it's not LA City. So J is countywide, so it should be on your ballot if you're in the county.
Right.
And then you've got all these measures, which will only be in your ballot if you're in that particular city. And then you've got the statewide propositions, which are the numbered ones. These city measures and the county measure are with letters. So I'm assuming that you're advocating for a yes on Measure Us, Long Beach. That's what Black Lives Matter LA has on their website, by the way, which you can find at blmla.org. This is the first time they've done a voter guide, but they don't have all of the city measures, but they do have a yes on Long Beach Measure Us.
Yes, thankfully it seems to be going through pretty well. We've got a good majority of our city council on it, the county supervisor, our state senator, the congressperson. Of course, we have those outliers on our city council who don't really want to do this, but that's okay because over 2/3 of who has been polled so far from voters in this city, we are voting yes on Measure Us to bring this into to Long Beach.
Okay, I don't know about HH. I remember we voted on an HH, which was housing. I don't know about an HH this time. Of course, I haven't voted yet, and that's probably obvious. But in LA City, do we have another HH, Nourbese?
I believe so, but not in Los Angeles. So it's not on my ballot.
Okay.
That's probably why you haven't saw it.
Okay, it's somewhere. But all right, cool. But talk to me about these bonds. I don't know, how many of the different cities you can talk about, but there's Citrus Community College has a Measure Y, Duarte Unified has a Measure S, Whittier, AA, Inglewood has I. These are all bonds for schools that are on the ballot this time. Pasadena has Measure O. And I will say that I see on the LA County Democratic Party that they're yes on all of these school bonds. Can you speak to that generally, or are there any you can talk to specifically?
I can speak to any of them. I can speak to them generally in the sense of the reason why we use bonds. And I will say that bonds are a little interesting because they require a 55% vote. So it's not just a simple majority, which is 50+1. But they are used because it is a way for our schools and our communities to get money without raising taxes. And so this is why a lot of local municipalities decide to use bonds as a way to fund this money, because it can be earmarked specifically for what they wanted to do, and it specifically can go to the city. So unlike some of the taxes that we do, right, so Los Angeles tax or a tax from the state, that sometimes we can get fight over, and there'll be conversations around the general fund and all those other things. Bonds can be very specifically targeted to something like schools, something like infrastructure, something like technology, which is why many of our cities are using this as a piece. I think it's actually not the greatest way to do business, but that's what we have for now, because it ends up costing taxpayers a lot of money. But until we find another way of making sure that we are funding and being more precise with our funding for our schools, this is kind of the alternative and best thing we can do to make sure that our kids get money.
Right. So though it's not our favorite way of funding these programs, as you say, it's what we have right now. I don't know, Molly or Nourbese, if you guys both want to weigh in on what your recommendation is. If you're going to go along with the LA County Democratic Party and urge people in all of these different cities to go ahead and vote yes on these various school bonds measures, or if it's, or if you're neutral because of the fiscal implications.
So I'm definitely a yes on them.
Go ahead,
I think that
okay, 1 second.
even...
Go ahead.
I'm definitely a yes on them. However, I think that it is an enthusiastic yes with the okay, but we still need to do the work to make sure that we get good people in office where we can actually start thinking of other ways to raise funds for our schools. And so it's an enthusiastic yes because it's the best that we have for now, but with the caveat that it's not perfect.
Yeah, well, I guess that's a good way of looking at it, as a call for further engagement. Sharron Lawrence, want to bring you in. Speaking about schools, even though we many times don't know anything about it, community college and school boards are super, super important. And most of the time we don't know anything in depth. So where do you even start looking for information when you come to stuff like a community college board or a water board?
Right. So I think one of the first things that you should do if you don't know is go to that particular community college district website. Right. But I think LA is interesting, right? And you mentioned it before, Dominique. Let's take the LA County Community College District in particular. It covers the entire county of Los Angeles, and there are about 7 seats that serve it. Each person is elected to a seat, but if you live in the county of Los Angeles, you vote on every single seat. Normally when you have a seat or some sort of a jurisdiction type setup, you would vote for people in your geographic area. It's not the case with LA County. And so, because you're not limited to go to a community college in your immediate area, although most people do, but you're not required to, you have a say-so as a voter as to who represents you, no matter what school you decide you want to go to in the LA Community College District, anywhere in the county of Los Angeles. And so in this election, there are 4 seats up. There are odd number seats. And I think one of the most interesting things about this race for your audience in particular is that currently there are no African Americans on the LA Community College District Board. And so, we do want to have a say-so. We do want to have a voice because we do make a significant portion of the student population. So that's where I would start, though, is just looking at the actual website of the particular board.
Right. A lot of times those sites, though, they kind of give you, they try to give you neutral information. This person's running and this person's running. And, if you don't know anything about those people, it, might as well be like the old Charlie Brown's parents. Me, this means nothing to me. I go in and I'm looking at my sample ballot right now. It says, Los Angeles Community College District Member of the Board of Trustees, Seat 5. And then it's got Glenn Bailey, Cynthia Gonzalez, Nichelle Henderson, Pat Sturgis, Scott Sfunkin, Michelle Manos, Sergio Vargas, Nichette James Gray, write-in candidate. And, this is the part where my eyes glaze over because I don't know anything about these folks. And actually on the ballot, it may be like Cynthia Gonzalez, teacher, school principal. Okay, that doesn't really tell me a lot. There's terrible principals and there's good principals, right? So how do I dig deeper and get more information, or what would you do?
So personally, I look for candidates. I look for me, to be really honest with you, because even when I talk to people that are running for office as clients, you have to make yourself available. You have to get yourself out there. You have to talk to voters. You have to set up your social media accounts. You have to
hold that
go out and
thought,
talk to
Shannon
voters.
Lawrence. We're going to continue this conversation about how to figure out the school community college district and water board members when we continue. We are saying, what the heck is all that other stuff on my ballot today? We'll answer those questions. You can call us 520-KJLH, 520-5554. Add your area code. It's radio free, 102.3 KJLH.